Today, we travel to the ancient lands of Persia, in the heart of vast deserts, where empires once marched and minarets reached toward the heavens, a nation staggers beneath the weight of foreign chains. Its pride broken, its power shackled, its place in the world fading into shadow. But then, at this crucial moment, the earth breaks its silence, it splits open. From deep below the ancient soil, something dark, primordial, and undeniable rises. A force that promises wealth, invites war, and demands sacrifice. Is it the promise of salvation or the seed of ruin? Is it a gift or a curse? Welcome to Season 1 of Time Goes Cold War coverage in our series War to War, where we cover the events of the decade after World War II that brought man from the brink of destruction to the threshold of the stars. I am Sebastian Brandstetter. Persia, May 26, 1908. The sound of screams and clapping rudely awaken Major Arnold Talbot Wilson from deep slumber. Hurrying out of his tent, he sees what he can't believe. After 7 years of desperately searching in southwestern Persia to find even a drop of oil, now he faces a 15-meter high fountain that's spewing oil like a geyser. The history of Persia and of the whole Middle East will be changed forever. This sticky and smelly hydrocarbon goo that we call black gold plays a significant role in the history of Persia. But why is some British major named Arnold Talbot Wilson happy that oil was found under the other side of the world? Well, to answer that, we need to know a little bit more about the history of Persia. The first Persian Empire is founded in 550 BCE and lasts for over a millennium until the Islamic Caliphate conquers the Sassanid Empire. From then until 1501, the land is divided among various dynasties. In the 16th century, however, a strong central government emerges, along with renewed hostilities with other powers. From the early 1800s, with the expanding power of the British in India in the east and Russia in the north, combined with Persia's inability to compete with European industrial might, it finds itself in a dire situation. This is the Qajar era because, well, it's under the rule of the Qajar dynasty. Although the country will never be formally colonized, from the 19th century, it feels the tight grip of Russian and British influence around its neck. The Russians covering up the north, the British doing the same in the south. One thing the British squeeze out of Persia is the 1901 Darcy Concession, which gives exclusive rights to prospect, extract, and sell petroleum and natural gas across most of Persia, excluding 5 northern provinces that are under Russian influence, to Darcy, a British investor. In return, Darcy agrees to give Persia 16% of the net annual profits from oil revenues. In reality, Persia would only ever receive about 11%. At the same time, the Russians in the north are also searching for oil, since they recently struck black gold in Baku. Simultaneously, the voice of a young generation of Persians, carrying ideas of democracy and the rule of law in their minds, echoes out across the windswept desert plains. It grows from a whisper into a growl, and in 1905, a constitutional revolution sweeps across Persia, and it becomes a constitutional monarchy. After 2,400 years of intermittent reign, the power of the Shah is limited. The newly formed parliament is heavily against both Darcy and the Russian influence, but they can't take any action because in 1911 the Russians invade and burn down the parliament. Then, the world erupts into a war, a great war. With it, Russia's military might wanes and parliament is formed again, although it still does not hold real power since the Russian army and the Ottomans still occupy the north and the British the south. With the 1917 revolution, however, Russian forces withdraw from Persia and the First World War ends, creating a power vacuum in the region. Reza Khan, a young officer, plans a coup with British support to overthrow the weakened Qajar dynasty. The coup succeeds, and the Pahlavi dynasty replaces the Qajars. Yet, despite their help, Reza Shah, soon turns against the British, accusing them of exploiting Persian resources. He also begins modernizing the country, even changing its name from Persia, which refers only to the Persian majority, to Iran, meaning land of the Aryans. A reference not to the future Nazi understanding of the word, but to the old Indo-European Aryan tribes. Reza Shah soon rules as an authoritarian, reducing parliament to a ceremonial role and tearing up previous agreements with the British, including the Darcy concession. However, Britain doesn't mind as much as you might think. It sees an opportunity for even greater profits. So they negotiate a new 1933 oil concession, raising Iran's nominal profit share from 16% to 20%, but also extending the contract for 60 years. The Anglo-Persian oil company, APOC, becomes Britain's richest asset, peaking in worth by World War II. With World War II, a changed Russian presence also returns to Iran. In August 1941, the USSR invades again from the north and the British from the south to secure supply routes, forcing Reza Shah to abdicate in favor of his son, Mohammad Reza. In the process, the wartime allies create a devastating famine that cost the lives of more than 1.5 million people. The Soviets promised to leave by war's end. Yet, as it comes, the British leave and the Soviets remain. Now, they demand concessions on Iranian oil and even land in the north as their prerequisite to leave. One of the key negotiators with the Soviets is Iranian diplomat Mohammad Mosaddegh. When the Soviets claim they must hold northern Iranian assets because the British control the south, Mosaddegh replies, "I don't think when a sane man loses a hand, he cuts the other one to make a balance. Instead, he would try to heal the other hand." Eventually though, through US and international pressure, the Soviets leave Iran in 1946, and Mosaddegh becomes a popular national figure as a result. Iran now enters its most democratic era as a semi-constitutional monarchy. In 1951, Parliament asked the highly respected Mosaddegh to become Prime Minister. He initially refuses, insisting the oil industry must be nationalized first. After Parliament passes said nationalization law, Mosaddegh accepts the position and announces, "Gentlemen, the process of the nationalization of our oil has officially begun." He names the movement the National Front. Mosaddegh is supported by the nationalists, the communists, the Tudeh party, and the clergy. Mosaddegh and Tudeh are far from allies, since Tudeh is more or less a direct Soviet proxy. Still, both understand the old adage, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." The British ambassador, Sir Francis Mitchie Shepherd, visits Mosaddegh, telling him Iran's action amounts to economic suicide, which may lead to revolution and communism, threatening, "Do you know who you're dealing with? You better first dig the well, then open your eyes, see who's standing in front of you, and only then steal the minaret." Mosaddegh retorts, "I believe the British Empire is now just like a fox. Fox barks and uses its tail to look bigger, but it doesn't act." So, in 1951, with the British unable to intimidate Iran, they take the case to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, stating that Iran violated the agreement under the APOC, now AIOC. Mosaddegh isn't fazed by this, and being a lawyer, he decides to go to The Hague himself. When he enters the building, he takes the British seat. The British delegate, dumbfounded, alerts him to his mistake and demands he leave and sit on the other side. Mosaddegh, unperturbed, refuses to talk to the British delegate, so one of the judges asks, "Sir, are you aware that you're occupying the seat of the British delegate?" Mosaddegh declares, "I absolutely know where I am. I wanted to take the British seat just to make them taste their own medicine and see how it feels to get your place occupied by a foreign force." Mosaddegh, who is fluent in English, now starts speaking in French, not uttering a single word in the language of his accusers. The British attempt to bribe the court and even send honey traps to the judges to influence the trial's outcome, to no avail. The ICJ votes in favor of Iran, and Iranian oil is officially nationalized. Mosaddegh deports all British workers. In response, Britain sets heavy sanctions on Iran, and the whole oil industry of the country shuts down. In April 1952, the next round of parliamentary elections is scheduled. However, Prime Minister Mosaddegh refuses to validate the result from 92% of the voting districts, effectively blocking many candidates, primarily monarchists, who oppose him and want the Shah to hold more power. While the elections are technically illegal, Mossadegh's actions raise serious concerns about his commitment to democratic principles. Is he willing to undermine the country's democratic system to advance his own political agenda? In summer, tensions rise even higher between Mosaddegh and the Shah, as the supporters of Mosaddegh question the Shah's role in the country. Should the Shah reign, or rule and reign at the same time? Was the constitutional revolution inspired by the role of the German Kaiser or the King of Britain? A huge argument ensues in parliament, and by the end, the fact-checking committee states that the Shah of Iran should reign, not rule, causing the tensions to escalate even further. If the Shah is meant to reign, but not rule, then why is he in control of the war ministry? Shouldn't that responsibility fall to the democratically elected prime minister? This becomes yet another point of direct conflict between Mosaddegh and the Shah. When the Shah refuses to relinquish such significant power, Mosaddegh resigns in protest. A new pro-Shah figure, Ahmad Gavam, is promptly nominated as prime minister. However, Mossadegh supporters boycott the vote and walk out in opposition. Despite this, the Shah approves Gavam's appointment and he becomes the new prime minister. Gavam is a known anti-religious secular figure, not that Mossadegh completely disagrees. I also believe that we should de-radicalize our country. Even before the Iranian women removed their hijab, my own family had already done so in Europe. But I was opposed to forced unveiling because I believe that unveiling should come through the growth and development of the people, not through coercion. But Gavam takes exactly that forced approach to secularize Iran, quickly moving against religious communities and trying to excise Islam from politics. In response, religious leaders, especially Ayatollah Kashani, declare strong support to Mossadegh, with Kashani even pledging his life to him. As tensions rise on July 21, 1952, Mossadegh supporters stage mass protests. Gavam orders security forces to fire on demonstrators, killing at least 50 people. Alarmed by the chaos, the Shah invites Mossadegh back, but under strict condition. Mossadegh, unfazed and resourceful as ever, pretends to faint during the meeting, causing the Shah to panic and agree to all of his terms. Mossadegh returns as prime minister, now with control of the war ministry and a relationship with the Shah more strained than ever. So, unsurprisingly, soon after, the pro-Shah media accused Mossadegh of plotting to abolish the monarchy and being sympathetic to communism. He denies the charges but loses the support of the clergy, who gradually become his rivals. A few months later, on February 28, 1953, the Shah invites Prime Minister Mossadegh to his palace under the pretext of discussing an upcoming foreign trip. As Mossadegh enters the car to make his way there, he encounters a shocking and surreal scene. Mobs of thugs and gangsters flood the streets, shouting, "Death to Mossadegh!" Leading the chaos is a notorious street enforcer, Shaban Jafari, infamously known as Shaboon the Brainless. According to Diary of Shaban, the demonstration was organized at the request of Ayatollah Kashani, the very cleric who, just months earlier, had vowed to sacrifice his life for Mossadegh. As Shaban records, Kashani told them, "If the Shah falls, so does our religious establishment." What happens next is both contested and chaotic, but we know this much. The Shah orchestrated a trap aiming to use street violence to eliminate Mossadegh. But not only were the Islamists aware of the plan, they were complicit in it. Had it not been for the quick thinking of the driver and the intervention of General Afshar Tuz, Mosaddegh might have been assassinated right there and then. Afshar Tuz himself, though, is not that lucky, as he disappears a month later and his dead body is found after 28 days. Shaban and his gang are eventually arrested and sentenced to prison, and the crisis is contained. For now. Because far from Tehran, on the other side of the world in Washington, D.C., British MI6 representatives meet with the newly elected US President Eisenhower. The Brits propose a joint coup plan to overthrow Mosaddegh. The British portray him as a communist sympathizer, a message that resonates with the current Cold War anxieties in Washington. President Eisenhower approves the idea and hands the operation over to the CIA. Kermit Roosevelt, that's President Teddy Roosevelt's grandson, is appointed to lead the mission. He and the Shah will stay in close contact as the plan unfolds. Meanwhile, in Iran, the pro-Shah media keep attacking Mosaddegh, aiming to undermine his character and discredit his leadership. One notable example that actually hurts his popularity is their coverage of his meetings with Pakistani officials that happened 2 years earlier. During one of these meetings, Mosaddegh said, "The oil of Iran does not belong only to Iran, it belongs to the entire Islamic world. Pakistan can now buy our oil at much lower price." The media seize on this statement to question the entire National Front movement. If its goal was to nationalize Iranian oil, they asked, then why is it being offered at a discount or practically for free to another country? Did we defy the entire West just to hand over our oil to fellow Muslim nations? In short, they label Mosaddegh a traitor. In reality, Mosaddegh never gave away oil to any country or sold large amounts to Pakistan at reduced prices. His efforts are simply attempts to bypass harsh British sanctions, not to woo the Islamic world with cheap oil. Given the increasing opposition, in summer 1953, Mosaddegh tries to dissolve parliament to remove his opponents. When the Shah objects, Mosaddegh holds a referendum. The people vote yes, and parliament is dissolved, despite that the PM does not hold this power. At this point, the Shah begins to take the coup plan much more seriously as Kermit Roosevelt arrives in Tehran. The CIA allocates a budget of $1 million to bribe military officers and government officials. The coup itself is scheduled for August 16th, and Roosevelt begins assembling a coalition of Mossadegh's staunchest adversaries: MI6 agents, imprisoned thugs, former army officers purged by Mosaddegh, and of course, the clergy. With all of this, Roosevelt believes he is well informed and prepared to execute the coup d'etat. But is he? Something that Roosevelt, the CIA, MI6, or the Shah do not know is that Iran's foreign minister, Hossein Fatemi, who is leveraging his extensive network and contacts among foreign diplomats, has already uncovered the plot and alerted Mosaddegh. Not only that, the operation is far from secret. The Tudeh party, Iran's Communist Party, aided by the Soviets, has established a comprehensive spy network that includes high-ranking military officers. One of them, Mahdi Homayoni, also warns Mosaddegh about the impending coup. There are even some secondary and oral sources saying the Soviets themselves warned Mosaddegh about the coup. Unaware that their plan has been compromised, the putschists continue their preparations. The first step will be the Shah officially dismissing Mosaddegh and appointing Zahedi as the new prime minister. Then, their forces split into 3 strike groups. The first group is assigned to storm Mossadegh's residence and arrest or kill him if needed. The second team targets his loyal officials, while the third aims to seize communication centers, cutting Mosaddegh off from his allies. Operation Ajax, as it's called, begins at early morning on August 16, 1953. Mosaddegh is well prepared. His residence has been turned into a fortress, with heavy defenses, even tanks in place. Loyal officers have long been placed on high alert, and media outlets just wait to rally citizens. As the coup commences, Mosaddegh supporters flood the streets, blocking the capital. When the first strike force arrives near Mossadegh's house, they are overpowered and surrender without any fight. The other teams disrupt some communications, but retreat once the main assault fails. The media, in turn, wastes no time at all in broadcasting news of the failed coup, urging the people to take to the streets and defend their democratically elected government. The next day, the Shah flees the country to Italy, leaving the capital Tehran in absolute chaos. Mosaddegh and his allies are divided over how to handle the captured putschists. Fatemi pushes for execution, but Mosaddegh is painfully aware that breaking the rule of law comes with a hefty price. The two argue fiercely, yet Mosaddegh stands firm. While this is going on, the chaotic streets are whipped into a frenzy by the Tudeh party. Paroles in support of Mosaddegh turn into demands for a republic and death chants against the Shah. Sensing the danger, Mosaddegh wants to address the public to restore calm, but Fatemi persuades him to stay back. Yet, at this crucial moment, behind Mossadegh's back, Fatemi decides to address the nation himself. Instead of dousing the fire, he decides to fan the flames further. He delivers a fiery speech directly aimed at the Shah. This hedonistic young man, blinded by foolishness, forgot there is a nation to whom the fight for oil and the battle against British colonialism belong. Run, you traitor! Even foreign powers see you as so contemptible that they offer no reward for your monstrous crime, the final shameful act of your 12-year reign carried out at their command. Pay now for the cabarets of Europe with your father's plunder and your own looted dollars and pounds. Run, you slave of foreign will. You have completed the bloody criminal history of the Pahlavi dynasty. The savagery, bloodshed, and looting of your house demanded this disgraceful end. My countrymen, the son of the same man who sold us out in 1933, now tries to destroy your national movement, as his father did for the British. But a traitor is always afraid. When the radio stated the coup had failed, he ran to the nearest foreign embassy that he could. Thank God, the final stronghold of British colonialism, the Pahlavi dynasty, was turned to ashes without a drop of blood. The God of Iran is mighty. That speech, delivered by a senior government official, makes one thing unmistakably clear to the masses. The government's stance is no longer just against Mohammad Reza Shah. It is against the entire constitutional monarchy. This speech changes everything, right? Instead of panicking, the coup plotters now seize the moment. Unified and further emboldened, they reorganize. Faced with this new threat, an end to the monarchy and with it of Islam in Iran, or so they believe, even the clergy turns openly against Mosaddegh. Ayatollah Kashani, once his trusted ally, then his critic, now launches scathing and public attacks and denounces him entirely. The very next day, US Ambassador Loy Henderson visits Mosaddegh. He warns that American citizens have been assaulted by members of the Tudeh party and holds Mosaddegh personally responsible. Under pressure and determined to avoid a direct confrontation with the United States, Mosaddegh makes what would become his gravest mistake. He calls on his supporters to leave the streets and return home, hoping to reduce tensions. The putschist army officers act quickly. They release known thugs from prison, including the infamous Shaban the Brainless. With Mossadegh supporters gone, these mobs now take over the streets, chanting "Death to Mosaddegh" and "Long live the Shah." Monarchist newspapers loudly echo the Shah's declaration that Mosaddegh is dismissed and General Sahedi is now the legitimate prime minister. And what does Mosaddegh do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Even as Tudeh party leaders beg for permission to mobilize and resist the coup, he refuses. He still clings to the rule of law, believing that justice and restraint can prevail. But the country no longer belongs to ideals. It belongs to whoever has the might to claim it. But one by one, the coup plotters capture government buildings, radio stations, and military strongholds. The final target is Mosaddegh himself. He attempts to flee, but he is caught. That is the end. The second coup succeeds just 3 days after the first collapsed. Hossein Fatemi and many others are executed. Mosaddegh is tried, humiliated, and sent into internal exile. He will never hold power again. From this moment forward, the Shah rules with absolute authority. He creates Savak, the feared secret police that brutally crushes dissent. He brings the nationalized oil reserves under his personal control. Konstantin Melumian, one of the few remaining voices, pleads with him. This filthy money that you're hoarding breeds inflation. Soon it will grow feet, march into the streets, and turn into fire, riots, blood, and revolt against yourself. But his warning, like so many others, is swallowed by arrogance. The dream of democracy in Iran, already fragile, is crushed not just by force, but by fear, betrayal, silence, and above all, greed. The gin is now out of the bottle, and Iran will continue to suffer under the autocratic forces opposing each other until 1979, when one prevails, the religious extreme. It shows once again the fragility of democracy and how populism, lies, and distortions can have consequences that carry forward into generations. Once democracy is broken, it is like Humpty Dumpty. All the king's men, all the king's horses can't put it back together again. It is stories like this one that help us understand our world today better than pretty much anything else. If you want to join the mission, understanding past mistakes to prevent the disasters of tomorrow, then head to timeghost.tv or patreon.com and enlist in the Timeghost army. Together, we fight the fight. With no further ado, until next time, Excelsior!